covered up lies until his death. Gene Kelly was born, Eugene Curran Kelly, on August 23, 1912, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Growing up in a working-class Irish-American family, Kelly was the third of 5 children. His early life was shaped by his parents' encouragement of the arts, particularly his mother Harriet, who enrolled her children in dance lessons despite the economic hardships of the time. Initially reluctant and self-conscious about dancing, which was not seen as a typical pursuit for boys in the early 20th century, young Gene eventually embraced it with passion. He demonstrated a remarkable aptitude for rhythm and movement, blending natural athleticism, honed through sports like hockey and gymnastics, with an emerging love for performance. Kelly later credited his unique dance style to this combination of physicality and expressive storytelling. After graduating from the University of Pittsburgh with a degree in economics, Gene Kelly briefly taught dance and performed locally before making the bold decision to pursue a career in show business. His breakthrough came on Broadway in 1940 with the musical Pal Joey, where his charismatic performance earned widespread acclaim. Hollywood soon came calling, and he made his film debut opposite Judy Garland in For Me and My Gal, 1942. It was the beginning of an illustrious film career that would redefine the musical genre. Gene Kelly's impact on film musicals in the 1940s and 1950s cannot be overstated. He starred in and choreographed a series of iconic films that seamlessly integrated dance into narrative storytelling, often pushing cinematic boundaries with innovative techniques. Perhaps most famously, Kelly co-directed and starred in Singin' in the Rain, 1952, widely regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. In the film's most memorable scene, Kelly dances joyfully through the streets in a downpour, a sequence that has become a timeless symbol of exuberant expression. The scene was not just technically impressive, involving careful timing and choreography, but emotionally resonant, turning a rainy night into a celebration of love and life. In addition to Singin' in the Rain, Kelly's other major works include An American in Paris, 1951, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and featured a 17-minute ballet sequence that was groundbreaking in its scope and ambition. His other film credits include On the Town, 1949, Anchors Aweigh, 1945, Brigadoon, 1954, and It's Always Fair Weather, 1955. Through these projects, Kelly championed a uniquely American style of dance that combined classical ballet technique with modern jazz and tap influences. He often danced with props on moving platforms and in complex ensemble numbers that had never before been attempted on film. What set Kelly apart was his ability to bring a masculine, athletic presence to the dance, helping to dispel lingering stigmas and expanding public perceptions of what male dancers could be. He moved with power and grace, making it clear that dance could be both emotionally rich and physically demanding. His choreography was full of invention, frequently incorporating everyday gestures and working-class themes. Whether he was leaping onto a lamppost, gliding down a staircase, or dancing with cartoon characters, as in Anchors Aweigh, where he famously danced with Jerry Mouse, Kelly brought an accessible, playful, and deeply expressive energy to his performances. Beyond his talent as a dancer and performer, Gene Kelly was a gifted director and producer who contributed to the evolution of cinema. He co-directed several of his most successful films, always advocating for new ways to integrate story, music, and movement. He was also one of the first filmmakers to utilize widescreen formats and location shooting for musicals such as In on the Town, which was filmed on the streets of New York City, rather than confined to studio sets. Kelly was known for his perfectionism and relentless pursuit of quality, often demanding multiple takes to achieve the precise emotional and visual effect he desired. Kelly's influence extended beyond the screen. Throughout his life, he was a passionate advocate for the arts and education, mentoring young performers and pushing for greater artistic recognition of dance in America. He earned numerous awards and honors, including an Academy Honorary Award in 1952, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute, and a National Medal of Arts in 1994, presented by President Bill Clinton. In addition, his films have been preserved by the Library of Congress for their cultural significance, ensuring that future generations can experience his work. Gene Kelly was married 3 times over the course of his life, and each of his marriages marked a significant chapter in his personal journey, reflecting both the joys and the challenges he experienced off-screen. Kelly's first marriage was to the actress and dancer Betsy Blair, whom he wed in 1941. At the time of their marriage, Blair was only 17 years old, while Kelly was in his late 20s. Their paths had first crossed a year earlier in 1940 during an audition for a nightclub revue. Kelly, who was already establishing himself as a talented choreographer and performer, was captivated by Blair's poise and potential. He hired her as a dancer for the show, and their professional relationship soon evolved into a romantic one. Despite the age difference and the demands of their budding careers, they quickly became inseparable. During their marriage, Blair actively supported Kelly's early rise in Hollywood, especially as he transitioned from stage to screen in the 1940s. In 1942, they welcomed their only child, a daughter named Carrie Kelly, who would later become a child psychologist. Though the couple initially shared a deep affection and commitment, their relationship was tested over the years by the pressures of fame, diverging ambitions, and the complexities of life in the entertainment industry. Despite these challenges, they remained together for over 15 years before officially divorcing in April 1957. The end of their marriage, while amicable, marked the close of a formative era in both their lives. In 1960, 3 years after his divorce from Blair, Kelly entered into his second marriage with Gene Coyne, a talented choreographer and dancer who had been closely associated with his professional work. Coyne had previously been married to director and choreographer Stanley Donen from 1948 to 1951. Donen being not only Kelly's former collaborator on iconic films like Singin' in the Rain and On the Town, but also a significant figure in American film musicals. Coyne had worked as Kelly's choreographic assistant for several years, and the two had developed a strong personal and professional bond. Their shared passion for dance, choreography, and cinematic innovation drew them together both in the studio and in life. Their marriage was characterized by mutual respect and artistic synergy. Together, they had 2 children, a son, Timothy, born in 1962, and a daughter, Bridget, born in 1964. Coyne played a stabilizing role in Kelly's life during a period when his career was evolving as he began to move away from the spotlight and take on more behind-the-scenes roles. Tragically, their union was cut short when Coyne passed away in 1973 after a battle with leukemia. Her death deeply affected Kelly, and he withdrew from public life for some time as he grieved the loss of a beloved partner and collaborator. Nearly 2 decades later, in 1990, Kelly married for the third and final time. His third wife was Patricia Ward, a writer and researcher who had been working on a documentary about his life and career. Their relationship developed slowly over time, beginning as a professional acquaintance and evolving into a deep and affectionate companionship. At the time of their marriage, Kelly was 77 years old, while Ward was 30, an age gap that drew public attention but did not seem to faze the couple. Despite the difference in years, their marriage was reportedly a happy one, characterized by genuine warmth and devotion. Ward cared for Kelly during his later years, especially as his health began to decline. She has spoken publicly about the importance of preserving his legacy and honoring his wishes, including his desire for a quiet, private life in his final years. Their marriage lasted until Kelly's death in 1996 at the age of 83. After his passing, Ward never remarried and has remained a steward of his memory, continuing to speak about his contributions to film and dance with reverence and affection. Together, these three marriages reflect the evolving dimensions of Gene Kelly's personal life, his youthful ambition, his mature creative partnerships, and his late-in-life companionship. Each relationship helped shape the man behind the legend and added richness to the story of one of Hollywood's most iconic stars. Gene Kelly, the legendary dancer, actor, choreographer, and director, remains one of the most iconic figures in the history of American cinema. Revered for his groundbreaking work in musicals such as Singin' in the Rain and An American in Paris. But behind his dazzling smile and unmatched athletic grace on screen, some believe Kelly took with him to the grave a series of hidden truths, unresolved contradictions, and personal secrets that he either denied or obscured throughout his life. Among the rumors that swirled around Kelly was the complex reality of his political beliefs and professional associations during a time when Hollywood was being shaken by the House Un-American Activities Committee. Though he maintained a relatively apolitical public image, Kelly was briefly associated with liberal and even leftist causes during the 1940s and early 1950s. His first wife, actress Betsy Blair, was blacklisted for her political leanings, and Kelly reportedly used his clout with MGM to protect her career. Yet for decades, he avoided directly addressing the extent of his own sympathies. Some historians suggest that Kelly quietly distanced himself from political activism, fearing it would jeopardize his career at a time when even vague associations could be career-ending. If true, this self-protective silence, while understandable, has been described by critics as a tacit form of betrayal to those less fortunate than him in the industry. It was a chapter of his life that he rarely acknowledged publicly, and when he did, he offered minimal clarity. There were also aspects of his personal relationships that remained shielded from public scrutiny. Gene Kelly's on-screen persona was that of the wholesome American everyman, charming, athletic, modest, and endlessly likable. Yet privately, Kelly was known to be exacting, often difficult to work with, and even emotionally distant. Behind closed doors, he maintained strained relationships with colleagues and even members of his own family. Co-stars, such as Debbie Reynolds, who was only 19 during the filming of Singin' in the Rain, spoke of the intense pressure he placed on her, with Kelly's perfectionism bordering on cruelty. She later admitted that filming the movie was one of the hardest experiences of her life, due in large part to Kelly's relentless demands. Yet Kelly rarely acknowledged these accusations and insisted in interviews that his directorial methods were merely driven by high standards and a commitment to excellence. The dissonance between the charming screen image and the taskmaster behind the scenes is a discrepancy he never fully reconciled publicly. There is also speculation regarding Kelly's alleged affairs during his marriages, especially during his second marriage to Jean Coyne. While no definitive proof has ever surfaced, Hollywood insiders long whispered about Kelly's complicated romantic life and occasional liaisons outside of wedlock. Though the image of Kelly was carefully cultivated to appear that of a loyal husband and father, the press and the studios of the time were highly skilled at managing celebrity narratives. Kelly himself contributed to the myth-making, presenting his marriages, particularly to Coyne, with whom he had 2 children, as grounded and blissfully content. His consistent refusal to acknowledge even the faintest hint of scandals suggested a man determined to maintain a carefully controlled legacy, no matter the reality. Further intrigue surrounds Kelly's complicated relationship with fame and aging. As the musical genre began to decline in popularity by the late 1950s, Kelly struggled to adapt. He turned to directing and choreographing more frequently, but his star power gradually faded. Publicly, he spoke with optimism about the evolution of film and expressed little regret. Yet those close to him described a man who became increasingly bitter about Hollywood's changing tastes, believing that the public no longer appreciated the kind of artistry he represented. Still, Kelly refused to admit to any resentment in interviews, instead clinging to the optimistic persona that audiences had come to expect. Some who knew him later in life claimed that this refusal to express vulnerability or disappointment represented another form of denial, a suppression of his truest feelings in favor of maintaining an illusion of lifelong contentment. Perhaps the most poignant concealment of all was Kelly's handling of his legacy in his final years. Though he was generous in interviews and retrospectives, he controlled his own narrative with exceptional care. He left explicit instructions that there be no funeral, no memorial service, and no fanfare at his passing. In doing so, he deprived the world of an opportunity to reflect openly on his complex life and career. This final act of privacy spoke volumes. A man who had always guarded his image to the last, who had shunned public mourning just as he had avoided personal confession. In the end, whether the lies Gene Kelly took to his grave were outright falsehoods or simply omissions, truths softened by silence, they remain a haunting element of his legacy. He was a man of extraordinary talent who revolutionized dance on film, but he was also a product of a system that rewarded appearance over authenticity. As the years pass, and more biographies and testimonies emerge, the portrait of Gene Kelly grows ever more complex, not tarnished, but more human. The true story of his life may never be fully known, but the shadows he left behind are as intriguing as the bright lights he once danced beneath. Gene Kelly's health began to deteriorate noticeably in the late 1980s, marking the beginning of a difficult and challenging period for the legendary dancer, actor, and director. Once known for his boundless energy, athletic grace, and magnetic screen presence, Kelly faced a gradual physical decline that stood in stark contrast to the vigorous persona he had displayed throughout his decades-long career in Hollywood. As he moved into his later years, he reduced his public appearances, and friends and fans alike noticed that he was no longer the sprightly figure who had once danced across studio lots and captivated audiences with every step. Despite his diminishing health, Kelly remained mentally sharp and continued to be involved in retrospectives of his work, often sharing insights about choreography, filmmaking, and the golden age of musicals. However, behind the scenes, he was quietly battling the toll that aging and prior injuries had taken on his body. In July 1994, at the age of 81, Kelly suffered a major stroke, a serious medical event that severely affected his physical capabilities. The stroke necessitated his hospitalization at the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles, where he remained for 7 weeks under close observation and care. During his stay, doctors monitored his condition carefully, while his family and close friends kept a vigil at his side, hopeful but realistic about the impact of such a serious incident. The stroke left him weakened, and although he showed signs of recovery, it became evident that his mobility and overall vitality had been significantly compromised. Physical therapy and rehabilitation efforts followed, but the process was slow and demanding, and the once nimble performer faced the difficult reality of reduced independence. Tragically, in early 1990, Kelly suffered a second more devastating stroke that left him severely disabled. This second stroke compounded the damage from the first and further diminished his quality of life. It robbed him of much of his ability to communicate and rendered him largely unable to care for himself. The man who had once brought such exuberant motion to the screen was now confined to a more passive and dependent existence. Yet those who knew him best recalled his enduring spirit and grace, noting that even in the face of physical decline, Kelly retained a quiet dignity. His family remained by his side throughout his final months, ensuring that he was as comfortable as possible and surrounded by love. Gene Kelly passed away on February 2, 1996, at the age of 83, at his home in Beverly Hills. His death marked the end of an era for American cinema and musical theater. as he had been one of the last surviving giants from Hollywood's golden age. Tributes poured in from around the world, with colleagues, fans, and admirers reflecting on his extraordinary contributions to film, dance, and the performing arts. Though his final years were marked by declining health and personal struggle, Kelly's legacy as a groundbreaking artist and an icon of American culture endured and continues to inspire generations of dancers, choreographers, and filmmakers today.